My sister-in-law snooped and stole our baby's name, then announced it right after she gave birth, but her face immediately dropped when she realized that we tricked her. So I have been married to my husband Kevin for 5 years. We have a 3-year-old daughter and I'm currently pregnant with twins. My brother-in-law Terrence has been married to his wife Jess for 7 years. Jess and I are total opposites. Jess an extrovert. She's kind of loud, boisterous, and some would even say abrasive. I'm an introvert. I'm not quiet or shy, but I am reserved. I'm also very observant. The first time I met Jess, I told Kevin that we would be like oil and water. We have never been overtly hostile towards each other but also have never gone out of our way to bond. Jess and I have been in a one-sided beef since the day Kevin and I started dating. I give her zero thought if I don't have to, and yet, I live rent-free in her mind. Based on snide comments she's made over the years, the reason why is jealousy. Kevin and I dated for only a year before we got engaged. We then were married within 6 months of that engagement. We had an actual wedding with a ceremony and reception, went on a honeymoon, bought a house in the burbs and got pregnant in rapid succession. Both of us have good careers and are financially stable. Mother-in-law, father-in-law and Neil all adore me. Jess and Terrence did not have a similar path. They had been on and off since they were 19-20, with Terrence never really wanting to commit. During one of their breaks, Terrence got a FWB pregnant and now has an 11-year son. This has always been a sore subject with Jess due to her fertility struggles, fibroids. When they finally got back together, she pressed him for marriage until he relented and gave her a shut-up ring. They went to the courthouse on a random Tuesday, then had dinner at Red Lobster afterwards and went back to work the next day. Not trying to be shady, just relaying the facts. They now live in a 2BR apartment in a call city while working hourly jobs. They aren't minimum wage or anything, but constantly need OT to make ends meet. This has led her to resent me over the years. She thinks everything has come easily to me and has let that fester. There was a time a few years ago at a gathering where she got drunk and got into an argument with Terrence. I think her attitude that night stemmed from seeing me with my infant daughter. To hurt him, she blurted out that she married the wrong brother. Everyone was shocked. I wasn't. She just said the quiet part out loud and revealed what I already knew. So I poked her a little and said, "Really, which one? That's kinda gross since both were minors when you met them." Context: Kevin and Terrence also have a younger brother Tim, 28. Boy did she fly off the handle after that lol. To this day she claims to have no memory of that night. Anyway, now I know there is a new reason why she resents me. Unfortunately, Terrence and Jess had fertility issues for several years before finally having their son a couple of weeks ago. Prior to this, Jess was very odd towards us when I was pregnant with our daughter. The best way to describe it is hot and cold. One minute she pretended like she didn't care while we were talking about it at family gatherings, the next she was volunteering to throw the baby shower. I gave a firm no to that. We both assumed the behavior was because of their fertility issues and didn't think too much of it. But the strangest thing she did was almost demand to know what we were naming our daughter before we announced it. She asked us constantly after our gender reveal and got visibly annoyed when we just laughed her off and said it was a secret. We couldn't understand why the hell she cared so much, as she was not expecting at this time. Regardless, we didn't share the name with anyone. When our daughter was born and her name was finally announced, Jess was kind of obsessed with it. I don't know how to explain it. She just kept going on and on about how beautiful and unique it was. To this day she comments about how different it is. The name we chose is a pretty common Welsh name which wouldn't be all that different except for the fact that we are African American lol. I've always gravitated towards names from different regions and found and fell in love with the name years ago and never shared it with anyone before Kevin. Fast forward to both of us being pregnant at the same time. Jess' odd behavior continued towards me, but this time it was more blatant. Snarky comments under the guise of jokes about how big I was going to get with 2 babies and that my body would never snap back like it did after our daughter. She even accused us of getting pregnant on purpose after she announced her own pregnancy, even though the whole family knew we were actively trying, and at the time of her announcement, I was already a few weeks along and didn't know. One thing about me, introvert or not, I'm no pushover and will stand up for myself. But I chose to ignore Jess because I knew that would get to her more than confronting her would, since she seems to thrive off drama. Jess was obviously much further along than we are. However, we did have our gender reveal prior to Jess giving birth. And right on cue, the baby name interrogation started again. Because they decided not to find out the gender of their baby in advance, Jess kept hounding us for both of the names we had already picked out. But again, we declined to answer. After days of this, I got annoyed and asked Kevin if he thought the reason for her insistence was so she could use the name first since she was due first. He kinda chuckled until he realized I was serious and said he didn't think so, but that anything was possible. So I said, "Let's test it." We were due to host my father-in-law's birthday at our house a couple weeks later, and I decided to leave something in the unfinished nursery with a girl and boy name on it and see if Jess went snooping. Because Kevin thought it was silly, he said he would give me $20 if she did it. So I went onto some site where you can order custom name wall decals and put in the names Aria Rose and Sebastian Ali. These are names that we like but aren't remotely close to what we chose. This will also be our last pregnancy, so even if Jess did use them, we wouldn't care. I didn't complete the order. I got to the final page and then printed it out and hid it in a dresser drawer in the nursery. The party goes off, but because we were busy hosting, we never noticed if Jess disappeared for any extended period of time. When I went into the nursery the next morning, nothing was out of place and the order sheet was still in the exact location, so we both just went Valp and forgot about it. I did however notice that Jess never asked us about the names again. Then Jess gives birth. We went to the hospital to give our congrats. When we go in and see the baby, I asked what his name was and man, I cannot properly explain the poop-eating grin that came over Jess' face as she says Sebastian Ali. I mean, she was really proud of herself, and honestly, it's the most vindictive I have ever seen her look in the years I've known her. But instead of reacting how she was expecting, I performed like I had graduated from Juilliard. Oh my god, that's such a great name. He's so cute. Look at his whittle face. Oh, I just love him so much. Welcome to the world, Sebastian. Auntie is gonna spoil you rotten. I mean, I am laying it on thick without an ounce of bother. The range of emotions on Jess' face went from shock to confusion to rage in a span of maybe 17 seconds. Meanwhile, my husband is holding in the laugh of the century. We later say our goodbyes and he gives me a 20 in the elevator while almost crying laughing. All I could say was, like I thought. This was 2 weeks ago and we haven't seen them since because we wanted to give them time to settle in with the new baby. I have heard from my mother-in-law that Jess doesn't seem as thrilled about motherhood as she thought she would be, considering how long it took them to conceive, but said it might just be baby blues. Obviously, I think she's just disappointed that her petty move didn't have the desired effect on us. I did share this with my sister, and while she laughed initially, she did say it was kind of an move. So, am I the a-hole? Update 11 days later. I haven't seen or heard from Jess since that day in the hospital. Terrence also hasn't communicated much with Kevin other than sports talk. However, my mother-in-law has been with them almost every day. She came over yesterday to go over some last-minute things for our baby shower that we are having the Saturday after Halloween. I am not due till late January, but with the holidays and twins tending to arrive early, we just wanted to get it out of the way. Anyway, after finalizing some things, I asked mother-in-law how Terrence and Jess were doing. She sighed and leaned back in her chair and said, "Girl, it's a mess." She goes on a long word vomit that I will have to summarize. Basically, they've been at it since before the baby was born. When they were discussing names, Jess' list only consisted of girl names. When Terrence asked what if it's a boy, Jess was adamant that it wouldn't be, but if it was, they would just use Terrence Jr. This caused an argument because Terrence's 11-year was not named after him and it would be petty to name the second son a junior. Unbeknownst to me, Jess was having severe anxiety over not the name, but the gender of their baby. So much so that she refused to find out early because she was afraid of disappointment and she wanted to enjoy her pregnancy believing she was having a girl. She really wanted a girl. I mean, really wanted a girl. This goes back to mother-in-law in my opinion. Mother-in-law is the only girl of 4 brothers. She had 3 boys. 2 of her 3 boys, Tim has a 6-yo, have boys. Then my daughter came along. Mother-in-law actually broke down in tears at our gender reveal. Since the day she was born, mother-in-law has become a little obsessed with her lol. Not in a Jamil way. She knows and respects boundaries, but the whole family is aware that my daughter is mother-in-law's favorite person in the world. I think Jess thought that, by having a girl, she would get that same attention and affection from mother-in-law, as she has never been Jess' biggest fan. When that didn't happen, something short-circuited in her head. Mother-in-law's words, not mine. Before we arrived at the hospital that day, they were still fighting over a name, so I guess when I showed up she just blurted it out. While I still think it was to hurt me, it seems like it was also because she didn't allow herself to think of anything else because she didn't want a boy. I said in the first post how I noticed her expression, however I completely failed to notice Terrence's. He was pissed. Jess had never mentioned that name to him prior and he had no clue where it even came from. He also hated it. He refused to sign off on that and they left the hospital without a name. In our state, you only have 7 days from birth to register a name. She eventually told Terrence to pick the name himself and that she didn't care anymore. So he did. He swapped out Sebastian for Jordan but kept Ali. Yes, after Michael and Mohammed lol. According to mother-in-law, since they've been home, Jess has shut down emotionally. She's been doing all the motherly things, but there's a disconnect there. Mother-in-law said she finally broke down to her a few nights ago that she'll likely never have a daughter due to her age and what it took to get pregnant in the first place. I think that will bring them closer together since mother-in-law never got the daughter she wanted either. I also felt bad hearing that because regardless of how I feel about her as a person, I do have a heart and would never want to punch down on her if she's in the throes of PPD. Jess still hasn't admitted to snooping, so I haven't admitted to setting her up. A few comments said I should never confess, but I think I will at some point, mainly because I don't care lol. I am more than willing to burn a bridge while I am still standing on it, but now simply isn't the time.